returns to the ground it came from, and the spirit returns to God who gave it. Tragic, tragic, says the old sage, completely tragic. The key to understanding this entire piece of literature is two oft-used phrases throughout. The first, whether you're familiar with vanity, vanity, all is vanity, or meaningless, meaningless, or tragic, tragic, completely tragic. That phrase is used throughout the composition of this entire piece of literature. There's one other phrase that's used throughout this piece of literature that has to be taken into consideration if we're going to understand it. What is so tragic? What is so meaningless? And the other phrase that's used all the way through this piece of literature is under the sun. You see, the old sage was writing about one reality. Oh, he understood the second, but he had a grand way of illustrating the second reality in the way that he described the first reality. And the best way to describe it was with the oft-used phrase, tragic, tragic, completely tragic. We too know that there is another reality, though we are most familiar with this reality because it's the one that we live in. It's the one we can touch. It's the one we can sense. It's the one we can smell. It's the reality that is our natural habitat and being. The other reality, another sage once said, we see it through a glass darkly, just barely catching a distorted image of the next reality. Some of us had the privilege on Sunday afternoon to catch one of the closest glimpses we can get of that second reality. Mom had continued to decline for the last couple of months. By Saturday, it was evident that the end was coming close. By Sunday, there was no question about it. She was still in a very, very regular breathing pattern. They were shallow, but very regular. We ate lunch. We're around her as a family. Darrell, who always was a bit of a mama's boy, standing at her shoulder, his one hand under her shoulder and his other hand rubbing her arm. And I noticed a change in Mom's breathing. It slowed down and became very shallow. We made eye contact, and I indicated to Darrell, it's very close. Sharon was sitting on the sofa sobbing, knowing that privilege that she's had for the last couple of months, selflessly caring for Mom, hours and days and weeks, was coming to an end. Krista was at her favorite spot, snuggled up against Grandpa, singing to her grandma. Dad was sitting there in the recliner beside the bed, his head down on Mom's shoulder, weeping quietly. The rest of us that were here, grandchildren and children, singing for about 15 minutes or so, got even slower and more shallow. She took a breath, and then didn't take a breath. The veil between this reality and the next reality is about that thick. In the words of the hospice nurse later, she landed like a feather. At that point, I was standing beside her. I just laid my fingers on her neck. She stopped breathing. I felt a heartbeat, another one, then another one, and then no more. And in that moment, Mom no longer needed the book of Ecclesiastes because she was no longer connected to the reality that is described as under the sun. She had slipped through that very, very thin veil from the under the sun reality to another reality. And the silver cord was severed, and the golden bowl was broken, and the mourners went out in the streets. But you and I are still connected to the reality that's described as under the sun. Mom is not. In the words of Scripture, she's at rest, at peace, and free. We know that. We have that assurance. So this poem that I've described as a tragedy of sorts in literature is still instructive to us because we are connected with this reality. And twice in this poem we are instructed to remember. Because, see, the days are coming. The days are coming. All of us are moving towards the days when the strong men stoop and the grinders cease and the windows become dim and desire goes away. That is the direction that every one of us are moving. And so this poem puts it in perspective for us. Remember. Remember your Creator. Remember Him. Oh, all around us there are people who are living in the reality of under the sun, and they're worshiping and they're pursuing all of the things that the old sage had described in the first part of this piece of literature. The pursuit of wealth, the pursuit of desire, the pursuit of pleasure, the pursuit of wealth, the pursuit of achievement, the pursuit of everything else that the old sage had tried in life. And in the end, tragic. Tragic. Completely tragic. The old sage sits back once more, contemplates a moment, then once again picks up his quill to compose the last paragraph in this work of literature. Now, all has been heard. Here is the conclusion of the entire matter. Fear God and keep His commandments. For this is the duty of all mankind. For God will bring every deed into judgment, including every hidden thing, whether it's good or whether it's evil. You know, none of us knows. Every one of our days have been written. God knows it. We don't know it. We didn't know that Mom's final day that was written in God's book was going to be on her 88th birthday. But God had foreordained that from the beginning. Your day is written in a book as well. You know, whether it's a tragic accident of a young person, whether it's a health crisis of a middle-aged person, or whether it's the tragedy that's described in this poem that is just old age and nature taking over. Know this, that every one of us are moving towards this time when every deed will be brought into judgment. That's just the reality. One of the beautiful things we know is we know the answer to the test before the test is given to us. The answer is in Jesus Christ. We know that the standard that this judgment will rest upon, it can be reduced to two elements. Love God and love each other. I am forever grateful for the influence that Mom had on my life, and I know I'm speaking for the entire family. You know, by the standards of everything that mattered, no, not the wealth, not necessarily the knowledge, not necessarily the pleasure, not necessarily all those other pursuits and worships that can happen in the reality under the sun, but in everything that truly matters today, Mom excelled at every one. There's no greater blessing that you can be given than that kind of influence and example for your life. I expect that in this entire room, if I were to ask, I won't, but if I were to ask anyone to recount a memory where Mom was either harsh with you or showed displeasure for you as a person, it would not surprise me, even in a room this size and with as many lifetimes as she's lived cumulatively with this group, that there would even be one person that would stand up and have a memory of Mom being harsh or showing displeasure to you as a person. That's just how sweet she was. That's just how sweet she was the whole way through as a person. I know some of you will have a hard time imagining this, that I actually deserved harsh words, even as a kid. I can stand here today before God and before Mom and say that I have no memory of her being harsh or showing displeasure with me. What a gift. What a gift. She wasn't perfect, no. But what a gift. You know, when we know that every deed, whether you think it's hidden or not, whether it was good or whether it was bad, is going to be recounted at the judgment. and we know the standard. Love God and love others. And then to have an example, a beautiful example, a sweet example of someone who lived that so well. Her love for God was just beyond question. Her love for Dad, there's no hint of question about that. Her love for us as children and our spouses, no question. Her love for all of her grandchildren, her great-grandchildren. Her love for her church, her love for her community, her love for people who were hurting. You know, there was just no reason to ever question her love. And I thank God for that. It's a beautiful tribute to my mother and her love for God and for others. An inspiration for me. How she could take the book of Ecclesiastes and live for another reality than the reality that is given as under the sun. So those of us who are left behind, I think today is instructive for us in that regard. We too are moving towards every day that time when we slip through that veil from this reality to the next reality. And we would do it with the same gracious spirit that has been demonstrated and exemplified by Mom.
Let's stand. Those of you who would like to stand, or the family may. Let's stand and let's sing this song, "When peace like a river attendeth my way." When peace like a river attendeth my way, when sorrows like sea